Silent anyway.
I got some, thank you.
She might snore.
That should be something for tonight.
No snoring.
That like women wear head coverings and silent treatment. Like my friends that are against that type of thing, they're like just yell at me. But it's like, but it's hilarious. Just look at the joke.
Who was making jokes about?
Well, he made some of them.
Oh, you'll have to tell me those later.
I don't remember all of them, but I do remember one of them.
Yeah. Hello, Facebook friends. Are we live?
Yep, we are live.
All right. And those of you who are late will be sorry you missed out on the current events. Well, you guys hear that Biden's in the hospital?
What? Oh, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, he has a terminal disease. He couldn't stop Putin.
Wow. Addison.
Wouldn't have taken us much convincing.
Yeah. Was Jason there?
Not yet. He probably will show up.
You missed it, Jason. You gotta rewind.
I hate it here.
Tyre. Isaiah 23. The burden against Tyre. Okay, let's listen now, please. The Facebook people are going to have trouble hearing me. Against Tyre, wail, you ships of Tarshish, for it is laid waste, so that there is no house, no harbor. From the land of Cyprus, it is revealed to them.
Prophecy in the negative, something.
Right, it's a heavy prophecy. His translation says oracle there. It's the prophets had when they had a negative prophecy of judgment like this, it was hard to bear. It was hard to carry. It was hard for them to keep it in.
And it's hard to say it because everybody hates you when you say it.
Right. And it's not pleasant being a hated prophet. Well, Jesus knew all about that. Would he say that a prophet gets no respect in his hometown or something like that?
Yeah, he's hated in his own country.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So, and then it says, wail, it gets right into it. Wail, no, that's Nineveh, or Nineveh's one of them.
Tarshish was near England, kind of like people think it is England, like ancient.
Yeah, good call.
As far away from Nineveh as it could be.
Yeah, Jonah got on a boat to the place he could think of or get a ticket for or whatever, and it was Tarshish, because God wanted him to go east to Nineveh, and he got in a boat and went west as far as he could. And there's a little debate on Tarshish, whether it's Spain, England. And get into the Phoenicians, right? And the Phoenicians, what were they famous for? Merchants and what else?
And kind of settlers, but they basically settled the entire Mediterranean.
Right, they were sailors and boat makers. They did set up settlement cities, like one in northern Africa and one in Tarshish, and I don't know, probably some other ones too, but they were famous boat makers. I mean, they made the boats for Egypt's navy. They made the best boats. I heard they were modular. They could actually, and one thing I was watching, it said they actually made it to America, and when they got to land, they could take their boats apart, walk it across land, get to a river, get in there, and put it back together, because they were modular. They
entire and not apart.
Not entirely together. So it says there's no house, no harbor. And what city, has it even mentioned this city yet? Oh yeah, it said Tyre. Now, where's Tyre?
That's north, kind of near north of Antioch, I think, right?
Antioch. I'm not sure where.
Or north of Damascus.
No. Damascus is Syria area, the capital of Syria. And see Israel here, and then
It's decently close.
and north.
It's on the coast.
Yeah, north of Israel is what country? Lebanon. Yeah, it's the area of Lebanon. The Phoenicians were along that coast. They were the sea peoples, they were called, coast. And then about, I think it was about half a mile out into the water was New Tyre, which was an island, and it was a fortress island. I mean, this thing was awesome because it had 2 bays, and this is their island, right? It's not really, but it had 2 bays, one on the east side, one to the north, one to the south, for ships to come in. It had 150-foot tall walls, and I think the rocks kind of jutted up around their boats, all the goods from all over the world. They were, Solomon had, remember it talks about Solomon hiring the king of Tyre to of Lebanon to Israel to build the temple, to build his palace. They were awesome. They were very wealthy. They brought in, peacocks and apes and all kinds of crazy things from all over the world. It sounds like they sailed around about Tyre, and one of the things is what kind of mines it has. And does anyone remember the kinds of...
Sorry, are you talking about Tyre or Tarshish?
Tarshish.
I said Tyre for a second.
Sorry, Tarshish.
Well, Ezekiel
England.
talks about Tyre, but
Weren't
Tarshish
they
had the
tin
mines.
mines?
Tin mines was one of them. Yeah, that's the key one. There's tin, lead, silver, a bunch of things. But Cornwall in southern England has a huge tin mine and lead. And see, that's what fueled the Bronze Age, from going from soft copper to harder bronze. And to make bronze, you got to have copper and a little bit of tin, like 10-15% tin. And that makes it a lot harder. So you're one. And it was famous for tin. The Bible mentions that. And so that makes it probably England that Tarshish is talking about. And it's the kind of the furthest you can go on the Mediterranean and go around the corner a bit and get to England. They were definitely capable of it. Now, it says, so there is no house, no harbor. Well, what's weird about that statement?
There's definitely a harbor.
There's on the island of Tyre. That's how they do all their trading. They have a huge navy. They're not afraid of anyone. They've got huge walls and they dominate the seas. So, and everyone's getting rich off them. So, and they're getting rich.
Was that too big to fail?
Where they'll bail it out because otherwise our economy is just going to go.
Yeah.
Well, it says there's no harbor, and guess what it looks like today?
No harbor?
No harbors. In fact, no island. No pimple. Well, I'll get into that history a little bit. Right now, it's just a pimple, a little bump there on the coast, and really, it's not even. It's no big deal. It's like a fishing village to spread out their nets now. It used to be like what's happening there. And it says, the land of Cyprus, it is revealed to them. What's revealed to them? Or what is Cyprus? Okay, first of all.
It's a little island in the Mediterranean, or a big island, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the big island in the Mediterranean. If I have Well, you can see it there. That's the orange one right there, where my middle finger is. That's Cyprus. You know, west of Lebanon, or a little northwest. They get a report that Tyre is destroyed. This is a prophecy, and you're like, well, I don't see that yet. Well, it'll come up. It's coming up. But that's, you know, the way the Bible works with its pronouns. We think of antecedents, so the it refers to something in the past. Well, not always in the Bible. Sometimes it'll have the pronoun first, and then it'll tell you what the pronoun is a little later. And this is such a case. Now, as far as the history, there's well, it's still future in Isaiah's time. It's still prophecy. Threat to Israel. What are they afraid of?
So this
Syria?
Assyria, yes, the invasion of Assyria. This is when Isaiah lives. He's prophesying just before the Assyrian invasion of the northern kingdom and then being taken off into captivity. So one of the and they're not just, you know, going after Israel. They're taking out people on the way, and they're taking out people after Israel. So what is it? They put Cyprus, no, all these names, Tyre, yes, Tyre under siege. And they caused them some problems, you know, restricted the ships going in and out, and some. Anyone know when that was? About the same time of the Assyrian captivity of the north of Israel. So we're close, back. 700, about 700 BC. The northern kingdom was taken into captivity about 722 BC. So they would hit Tyre before they hit the northern kingdom of Israel, because they and Euphrates River, that's the way Babylon, Assyria, whoever, they would, you know, come from between the rivers, the great rivers of the Middle East. They would go up the river, not across the desert. They need water for their troops. They go up the river, then come down the coast. So they go up the river, Babylon. So they also attacked, and who was attacked Tyre, and who was the great king then?
in Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar. That's right. The greatest king of Babylon. Make sure you pronounce it right. Emphasis on the Chad. Nebuchadnezzar. So, and then, let me see, what was it? Who conquers Babylon?
The Medes and the Persians.
The Medes and Persians and
Greeks.
the Greeks, Greece, and who's leading the Greeks? Alexander the Grape. Yes, actually, there's these. Have you seen those candies? There's lemon drops, and then there's one called Alexander the Grape. Yeah. Alexander the Great. Anyway, he came, and he does not like being told no. You don't tell Alexander well, he's young, you know, he's still young and proud. He's like in his 20s.
He was the one who sliced the knot in hat, wasn't he?
Maybe. And he's conquering the whole world. And these Tyranians, whatever they're called, aren't afraid of him. They have a navy and ocean years, and they took out the coastal Babylon. I mean, they wiped that out. But they didn't get the island. But then Alexander the Great comes, and he does it in 6 months. Well, he can't really get them, you know, that's fast, and he takes over places fast with a small force. Well, he recruits, or what do you call that when you force? Conscripts a bunch of, you know, local nations that he's taken over, all the men, and this destroyed city of Babylon, God prophesied that land would be scraped on the coast, would be scraped off. And it was rubble, it was destroyed, but it wasn't scraped off. That's what Alexander the Great did. He got all these men, and they took all the rubble, all the big building blocks from the destroyed buildings of the city, rich city of Tyre, on them, you know, all the nasty stuff they do. And when the soldiers got into Tyre, they just slaughtered and raped. Alexander the Great crucified 2,000 people on the beach and slaughtered a bunch more and took a bunch more away as slaves. So, and there's more history than that, but that's pretty much the big destruction right there when the island. Verse 2, be still, you inhabitants of the coastland, you merchants of Sidon, whom those who cross the sea have filled. What's that last line? Well, where's Sidon? Okay, now I need to find another. I'm always looking for the biggest map that has my thing on it. Okay, well, there's Tyre right there above Israel. Lebanon's above Israel, modern day Lebanon, but it was called Phoenicia back then, the sea peoples, and then, or the boat builders. And above that, north of Tyre is Sidon, a ways north, and those are probably the two biggest or richest cities of Phoenicia, right there. So and oftentimes they're mentioned together, Tyre and Sidon. Tyre and Sidon in the Bible. They're like sisters. This is on that island and on Sidon, and they just get half of all the wealth that comes in there whenever they sell their stuff or buy stuff, big piece of the pie. And they became the wealthiest cities in the world. This is before Babylon became the huge, wealthy city. So, let me see, whom those who cross the sea have filled with what? Everywhere, even beyond the Mediterranean area. Verse 3, and on great waters, the grain of Shihor, the harvest of the river, is her revenue, and she is a marketplace for the nations. So do some of your translations say a specific river? The Nile, okay. And on great waters, the grain of Sihor, I believe that's in Egypt, a city in Egypt. And then this river word, it's like, I looked it up, translate river or stream, but often it is talking about the Nile. I think 44 times in the NASB it's translated Nile, and a lot less other things. So it's mostly translated the Nile. The harvest of the river or the Nile, God prophesied it would dry up and have all kinds of problems like it is today because of the dams and different things. But here, the river would overflow every year, and the delta where it spread out into a big triangle of streams. Remember, where did the Jews stay when they were in Egypt? What area? Goshen, the Nile Delta, the Nile Triangle would flood over. It would feed all their cornfields or whatever. Actually, cotton was, I think, the thing that took the most water. But they also did things like reeds. They made the paper for the world. Papyrus, yeah. That's made of reeds or reed leaves. So anyway, they would do something. So, and on the great waters, the grain of Shihor, the harvest of the river or the Nile is her revenue, her profits. And she is a marketplace for the nations, not just Egypt, the Gentiles, the whole world. Well, even Israel. Israel, as far as I know, Israel never went to war with the Phoenicians, never fought with them. King Solomon had a pretty good relationship with the king of Tyre at that time, but like in Ezekiel, the king of Tyre there, he's possessed by Satan. He's a type of Antichrist, and that's one of the two major passages that talk about the fall of Satan, and it'll go back and forth between talking about someone who was born and someone who was created, between Satan and the king. They had this big pride thing in common. Verse 4, be ashamed, O Sidon, for the sea has spoken, the strength of the sea, saying, I do not labor nor bring forth children, neither do I rear young men, nor band of Cyprus. It is revealed to them. What's the it? It's this report. The report of the destruction of Tyre. So it reaches the island of Cyprus, and then it reaches Egypt. And it says, when the report reaches Egypt, they will also be in agony at the report of Tyre. Like, oh no, what are we going to do now? That was most of our nation's income. Verse 6, cross over to Tarshish. Wail, you inhabitants of the coastland. Go run away to your furthest settlement, like to England, to the tin mines, and go work there. It's like, oh, we're not used to working. We have really nice soft hands. We're used to, purple velvet. That's what we're used to. I think they might have been the ones who made that expensive purple dye or maybe it was mollusks or something like that, but this expensive purple dye that, well, mostly only royalty could afford. And that was one of the things. Remember, Lydia was a seller of purple in the book of Acts. So she took these inhabitants of the coastland. 7, is this your joyous city, whose antiquity is from ancient days, whose fleet carried her far off to dwell? Feet carried her far off to dwell. And what should it be? Did the Tyrians walk? No. They floated. They went on ship. They went by ship. They didn't walk places. That's for Israelis or something. No. But this says they're going to carry them off to a far land. They're going to have to walk as slaves to a far land. Is this your joyous city? In other words, there will be no more rejoicing. It'll be weeping and wailing when you see all those people on crosses. Is this your joyous city, whose antiquity is from ancient days? It was a very old city. I think it's, I can't remember how long, but something like 2,000 years old, or I don't know. It's such an ideal location. It probably cropped up shortly after the flood, because Noah's family spread out from the mountains of Ararat, which wasn't real far from there, and went in all directions. Anyway, it's an ancient city. The Bible acknowledges that here, whose feet carried her off to dwell where? Well, who took the island of Tyre? Yeah, Alexander the Great, Greece. So some of them were taken off that survived as slaves to Greece, and they probably, I imagine it was mostly women and children. Verse 8, who has taken this counsel against Tyre, the crowning city. This is like, the crown is the most glorious thing, king, and it's the symbol of his authority. Well, Tyre was the crown of the Mediterranean, the most wealthy and powerful city, whose merchants are princes, whose traders are the honorable of the earth. All of them, it's actually pretty important if God devotes that much of the scriptures to it. Verse 9, the Yahweh of armies has purposed it to bring dishonor, to bring to dishonor the pride of all glory, to bring into contempt all the honorable of the earth. Well, you can see what they thought of themselves. They thought they were the pride of all glory and the most honorable people of the whole earth, that one of their salesmen is better than princes and kings anywhere else. Verse 10, overflow through your land like the river, or like the Nile. And what did the Nile do every year? It flooded, it overflowed, and that brought a bunch of silt and fertilized the land and watered it and gave them good crops for that year. It irrigated. It says, but it's not talking about Egypt here. It's saying that, I think it's talking about their enemies will overflow like the Nile flooding. O daughter of Tarshish, there is no more strength. Who's the daughter of Tarshish?
Tyre? No.
Probably Tyre. I'm not sure why.
The other way around.
Yeah, it seems like it should be. But
Who actually go there?
actually, I don't think it was like, well, if you think of white people coming from England, I don't think that's the right idea, because what was the land called before it was given to Israel? What was the promised land called?
Canaan.
Canaan, the land of the Canaanites. Who was Canaan? Yes, there was Noah, Ham, Canaan. He's the son of Ham. And I believe Ham means dark, and one of his sons, his name means burnt face, so they were dark. Like Cush, it's Cush, I believe, that means burnt face. Like all the three of his sons
Ironically, the people with dark faces don't burn as much, but you know.
went to Africa. They were Cush, which is Ethiopia, Mizraim, which is Egypt, and Put, which is like west of Egypt. So they were the ones that went. Verse 11. Let me see. The overflow through your land, O daughter of Tarshish, there is no more strength. It's talking, the woe is to Tyre, right? So I think it's talking about Tyre, the burden against Tyre.
Well, yeah,
So I think that's the daughter of Tarshish. I don't fully understand the daughter terminology,
when you
but
keep
go ahead.
reading, down in another verse, it says the virgin daughter, Sidon, however you say it.
Right,
And it says that you said that Tyre and Sidon were sister cities.
yeah, and it might carry the idea of like, well, what's a daughter? A virgin daughter. She's young, she's beautiful, she's glorious, she's, just looks
Potential.
a lot of potential, looks amazing. Well, that's what Tyre was like, just glorious and beautiful, the jewel of cities. Verse 11, he stretched out until Babel, Nebuchadnezzar, and Alexander the Great came along.
Married daughters are pretty great too.
Yeah. It's
Careful
like
with how you say that.
yeah. How did that verse 11? He stretched out his hand over the sea. He shook the kingdoms. Who? Yahweh has given a command against Canaan to destroy its strongholds. So why is he saying Canaan? Because Canaan is the father of some other nations. The Phoenicians, the Hittites, the huge Hittite empire, and other ones. Still a subcategory of Canaan, the Phoenicians, because that's in, I don't know if you want to see that or not, but it's in the Table of Nations, Genesis 10. You should memorize that. That's where the Table of Nations is, where we see where Genesis 10:15, Canaan begot Sidon, Tyre and Sidon. See, Ham, Noah, Ham, Canaan, Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, from whom come which group? Which huge empire that 100 years ago the liberal critics of the Bible were saying the Bible's wrong because there was no great Hittite empire. The Hittites never exist. We don't have one scrap of archaeological evidence, so the Bible's false. Well, now there's huge museums to the Hittites. They've found so many cities and evidence of them. So I guess, what does that prove?
The Bible's not wrong.
The Bible is true.
Apparently.
It was wrong before, but now it's true. No, the Bible's been right all along. Trust the Bible over archaeology, over evolutionists. They have a huge, bloated, deep time theory, which is more like a fairy tale.
Yeah, they use that. Once you get used to deep time, you'll understand the truth, man.
Anyway, Canaan, 15, Canaan begot Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, or the Hittites, the Jebusite, which, remember, what did David take? What was the place he conquered? Or, well, maybe he bought it. Maybe he didn't conquer. But the Jerusalem was called Jebus of the Jebusites. Before it was Jerusalem, it was Jebus of the Jebusites. So here's the Jebusite, the Amorite, the Girgashite, the Hivite, the Electric Light, the Archite, all the ites. And the Sinite, that's the Chinese, and the Archite is the Phoenicians. And it goes on, there's more, but that's enough, and that's a fascinating study there. But in general, at least early on, it seems like descendants of Japheth mostly went north, and the descendants of Ham mostly went south into Africa. Israelites, Arabs, Isaac, Ishmael, the Assyrians, they're Semitic. They went east, the Middle East. So back to Isaiah, what verse were we on? Island of Tyre with 150-foot walls. I mean, that thing was impressive, intimidating just to sail up to it with these huge cliffs, and then on top of that, 150-foot walls and big bays with their huge navy and all the best ships. Verse 12, and he said, you will rejoice no more, O you oppressed virgin, daughter of Sidon. Now, run for their lives. We'll get in their boats and go to the next big island, Cyprus. There also you will have no rest. They're going to chase you there too. 13, behold, the land of the Chaldeans. This people, which was not, Assyria founded it for wild beasts of the desert. They set up its towers, they raised up its palaces, and brought it to ruin. Now, this threw me off at first, like, why is the Chaldeans coming up all of a sudden? Who are the Chaldeans?
The Babylonians?
Yes, the Babylonians. It's synonymous for the Babylonians. Behold the land of the Babylonians. Well, it's coming up because it's important, and it has a relationship to who's the subject matter of this chapter?
Tyre?
Tyre, yes. Woe to Tyre, the fall of Tyre. So the Chaldeans have Babylonians have something to do with that. This people, which was not, at this time, they're pretty much nobodies. Assyria founded it for wild beasts of the desert. Assyria had conquered it or defeated it early on. They're not an empire yet. After Assyria, they set up its towers, they raised up its palaces, and brought it to ruin. And it was, as far as I understand it, it was actually an Assyrian that founded Babylon. It was mentioned in Genesis 10 or 11 that Nimrod founded all these city-states like Nineveh and Babylon and I'm not sure if Asher. Well, there's a guy named Asher, one of the descendants of Shem. Anyway, so it wasn't the Assyrian Nimrod, who's like one of the first types of the Antichrist. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. I think he hunted the Lord's people, like the Antichrist will hunt the Jews in the second half of the tribulation. Verse 14, wail, you ships of Tarshish, for your strength is laid waste. 15, now it shall come to pass in that day that Tyre will be forgotten 70 years according to the days of one king, or the life of one king. At the end of 70 years, it will happen to Tyre as in the song of the harlot. So, when was this 70 years?
Was this the same 70 years that Israel was taken captive?
Yeah, Judah was taken captive where for 70 years?
Babylon?
Babylon, yes. So I believe it's when Babylon took the coastal city, and I think they caused a lot of problems for Tyre, so that they were pretty much crippled their trading for the 70 years that Babylon was controlling that area. And then later, after 70 years, the Medes and Persians come and they're like, well, I think we could make a lot of money if we just loosen the reins on Tyre. And kind of like, what was it, China and Hong Kong? Hong Kong's made a lot of money because they were like, okay, you can kind of be separate and democratic, and I don't know, we'll rent you out to Britain or something. And they made a lot of money, but now China wants them back. So, according to the days of one king, remember, I think it's in the Psalms, it says, a man lives 70 years, if perhaps by strength, maybe 80. That's kind of a normal generation if he's a healthy man.
Usually if a guy gets past 80, his mind starts to go, so.
Yeah, it's already starting. At the end of 70 years, it will happen to Tyre as in the song of the harlot. What's the song of the harlot? Or why would a harlot sing?
To get attention?
Yeah, to attract attention. Why do cats go outside and wail? Because there's a cat house. They're trying to attract attention. They're being very bold and brazen and singing on the street corner like it's like the ice cream truck coming by. All the kids come running with the dingly music.
My boss's wife, when she was in Africa...
She did that?
No.
Oh.
So, she would walk down the streets of Africa whistling, and people would look at her.
Chris, it's not helping.
And then she found out that, like, over there, that's what whistling is. Like, women will whistle going down the street.
Looking for attention.
Oh.
And so, like, nothing happened to her because they're like, Americans.
They thought she was acting like a woman of ill repute.
Yes, because that's what...
She was just being cheerful with a song in her heart. Verse 16, here's the song.
Study the culture before you enter it.
Take a harp, go about the city, you forgotten harlot. Make sweet melody, sing many songs, that you may be remembered. So, what does that mean? What's it talking about? The song of the harlot. Why is it here?
Is it saying that Tyre should just, like, get their goods while they can?
Well,
because their end is coming?
It's saying Tyre was like a harlot, trading-wise with the other foreign nations. She was like a harlot. But she was a forgotten harlot for 70 years. So now she's like 90 years old and she's going to be remembered again. She's going to take up her former occupation 70 years later.
I like how the HSB has a rhyme. It will happen to Tyre. Pick up your lyre.
Verse 17, yeah, and what's a lyre?
A harp.
Yeah, a small harp or Biden.
Oh.
Not a liar, but a liar.
Sorry. I shouldn't speak evil of the current regime. It shall be, 17, at the end of 70 years that Yahweh will deal with Tyre. She will return to her hire and commit fornication with all the kingdoms of the world on the face of the earth. Like I said, God's comparing her trading with all over the world with what a prostitute does. It's like they're like gathering the seeds of all the nations, the crops of Egypt and such.
Is that perhaps because, is the trading with all the nations considered negative?
I'm not going to explain the seeds analogy.
No, I'm asking
okay.
why it's considered negative. Is that because, in the pursuit of wealth, like morals just tend to be left by the wayside in general, or is it just because it's not a godly nation in general?
Well, I think there was one translation somewhere where it's talking about Tyre, and it mentioned revelry, which is unrestrained merrymaking, like loose morals parties. Yes. Okay. So with wealth, with lots of free time, comes more creative ways to sin.
If you're working
idle
hard,
hands,
you don't have a lot of time to sin.
right. Idle hands are the devil's workshop, and nothing good happens after midnight. Yeah. Verse 18.
Then sleeping is good.
Sleeping is good.
Well, not always.
This must be why some parties are so prim and proper, because they're so afraid of that partying. Maybe it's good.
Verse 18. Her gain and her pay will be set apart for Yahweh. Now remember, it had said, what was it? A last days phrase. Where was that? 15. Now it shall come to pass in that day. In that day often refers to the time around Messiah's return, like the tribulation period or the kingdom when Christ is reigning. How do you know the kingdom's not right now?
Because Jesus isn't here on the earth right now?
Yeah, Isaiah says how you know when the kingdom is. It's when the Messiah is sitting on David's throne in Jerusalem, reigning. That's how you know you're in the kingdom. So no Messiah, no kingdom. He's got to be here on this earth physically. And Hannah has been to Israel a few times, and he's not there yet, although there's a few nut jobs that claim to be him. These rabbis.
Just rabbis.
Yeah, other cults.
Crazy people.
Verse 18, her gain and her pay will be set apart for Yahweh. I think this is jumping ahead in time. Remember previous chapters, we were talking about multiple kingdoms, mainly what three kingdoms? What three great kingdoms have we been talking about for many chapters now?
Egypt,
Assyria, yes.
Israel, and Egypt? Are those the same?
Assyria's one I'm looking for, not the other ones. Babylon, and those are being contrasted with what kingdom? The kingdom of Messiah, the millennial kingdom. There's a lot in Isaiah about the millennial kingdom, about after Christ returns. So,
how do we know Christ will come in our generation? Because it's the millennial kingdom.
and you're the millennials.
Yeah.
Well, there is that hymn that seems kind of prophetic. The trump shall resound. Trump, Trump's kind of a loudmouth. And the Lord shall return. First trump, then the rapture.
So now that Trump has happened,
and we're waiting.
Sometime after that.
Yeah, we're still waiting. Well, Trump should still be in office, so maybe it'll be after this term.
After he gets his second term.
After the president-elect. Well, he's already out, but whatever. So I believe this is jumping to the day of the Lord, Messiah's kingdom, the 1,000-year reign. Her grain and her pay will be set apart for Yahweh. Tyre's riches will be benefiting Yahweh himself, and that's Jesus on the earth. It will not be treasured nor laid up. They're not going to be hoarding it. For her gain will be for those who dwell before Yahweh. Who would that be? Where does Messiah reign from? What city?
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem.
Zion.
Yes, Mount Zion or the temple. He's so, and who serves him there? The Jews. The Israelites. They're going to be a nation of kings and priests. That's what they're promised. They'll be mediators to the rest of the world. To put the cat down, please. And they'll be doing what they were supposed to be doing in the Old Testament, being a light to the nations, carrying the name of Yahweh to the Gentiles. To eat, and it says, for her gain will be for those who dwell before Yahweh, Yahweh's people, especially Israel, which is where Christ will be reigning from, to eat sufficiently and for fine clothing. So they'll be providing fine food and fine clothes to, like the priests in Israel. Well, maybe all the Jews. Well, they're supposed to, that's what they were supposed to be originally. This is the restoration of all things. The whole nation was supposed to be priests. But then they had a tire party. They had an attire party, and it was included a gold calf at the base of Mount Sinai. Oh, Moses has been gone 40 days. Let's, well, who really delivered us from Egyptian slavery? This gold calf did. And so they, rose up to play, and it wasn't rated G play. And so they...
Maybe that's where we get the phrase, don't have a cow.
Yeah, don't have a cow, man. They... Anyway, that's when God restricted them from being a whole nation of priests to one tribe. He said, who is on the Lord's side? Who will take up arms against their brethren for the judgment of the Lord? And the Levites stepped forward. And so he made them the priest for Israel, because it's like, I got to deal with this nation first. That's what the Great Commission was about. It's like, you got to get Jerusalem right, and then Judea. See, you're spreading out further and further, and then Samaria, and then to the uttermost parts of the earth. You got to get Israel right to be a light to the whole world.
I don't quite see it.
And that brings us to the end of Isaiah 23. Next week is, my pericope says, Isaiah's little apocalypse. Desolate Palestine after Babylon, or Israel, I hate that word, Palestine. After Babylonian invasion, pictures distress in the tribulation. That's a long pericope. Okay. Who would like to close us in prayer? Okay.
Father God, thank you for this time of gathering together, and thank you for your word. And Father, there's many things we can learn from it, and this week I pray we can glorify you in all our celebrations and all our tradings and all our dealings with others, and help us to have pure intentions and minds and just actions. And Father, I pray as this week continues, I thank you for another week, and just that you would continue to be with us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right. Noah, do you guys have your verses ready? No? Okay.